If that child can walk out of your classroom and feel respected and valued, you've done your job.
What if you don't?
I changed my perspective completely.
Okay,
Nikki.
so your mindset
Then I
was
was like,
this is not about me, this
hugs.
is about them.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to She Leads the Way. I'm Nicki Bedford and today's guest is Farah Danish and she is an autism family coach. And today we're going to talk about autism within families, mindset, as well as the law of attraction. Farah, welcome to She Leads the Way.
Thank you so much, Nicki, for having me here. And thank you for being so respectful with the way you're using the word autism. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, you're welcome. Let's kick it off. I'd love to hear about your experience with autism and what inspired you to start being a coach in this space.
Well, actually, Nicki, I grew up with autism. It's not like, my first child was on the spectrum. Yes, that happened. But I am also a sibling to an individual on the spectrum who's an adult now. So I know what the trauma, the stress, everything that I went through, that was part of my childhood.
Yeah, wow.
Grew up, got married to the love of my life, and my first child is on the spectrum. And, like every mom who gets that new diagnosis, I'm like, why me? But in my case, I'm like, when is this going to leave me? What is this supposed to take out of me? And I went into depression. I clearly remember the time that I went into depression. It was so severe, but then I knew that not new. At that time, I felt that there's no time to process my feelings. I just have to get right into it because with the diagnosis, straight away they tell you that early intervention is key.
Yeah.
All the specialists out there, they don't allow or give room to family to grieve this diagnosis. And I'm using that word very cautiously here because that's exactly what it is. You actually feel that your child is gone before he even had a chance in life. You've already imagined that child's marriage, his wedding, your grandkids, all of that is gone. The minute you get that diagnosis, it's all gone. So you don't go through that grieving process and straight away you're into early interventions, you're looking things up, you're reading, you're researching, you're completely absorbed into this different life. And typically, I think every mom of a child on the spectrum can relate to this.
Yeah.
They go into that. And back to the question, I just got carried away into my memories, Nicki. It's just that the more I learned about autism, the more I wanted to work and be around that community and see how I could give in, because clearly that's the path God chose for me.
Of course. But beyond that, because you grew up with it, you knew exactly what was to come.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about growing up with a sibling that has autism?
It was very traumatic. It was so traumatic. And there's some incidents that I really remember. And I've never spoken about this, Nicki. This is the first time I'm talking about it. I remember when I was doing my bachelor's and one of the modules was a Psychology 101 course where they were talking about I remember what we were, going to do in the next class. And I decided not to go for that class because they were going to touch upon the topic autism. And
How old were you then?
This is when I was in uni, so it was about 18 years old. And I was just too embarrassed to come to class, to hear this, because I just imagined that people would be giggling about this because nobody understands. And this is years ago.
Which were even more prevalent was the bullying.
And the terminology that they used at that time. Now it's obviously a lot more respectful, but at that time, the word idiot, people with mental retardation, they refer to as idiots. So I was like, I don't think I can sit in a class where people will be like, oh, you're an idiot or she's an idiot. That terminology is for you.
Of course.
Like, you don't even know the half of it. So I remember bunking out on most of my psychology classes because I didn't want to be in a class with that being discussed. So that's one of my most vivid memories.
Yeah, it's interesting to look back and think that would have been your stance, because there could have been an opportunity as well where you actually knew more than most people in the room. Is it an older sibling or younger sibling?
Youngest.
Younger?
Yes.
Male, female?
Male.
Male.
Yeah.
And how is he doing?
He struggles because we didn't know how to help him.
Of course.
We had no information. We did the usual. We sent him to a special school. But as a family, we didn't know how to support him. And we didn't know how much impact our words had. We would say things like, when he'd have his meltdowns or tantrums, we'd tell each other to ignore him because his verbal skills were very limited. So we just assumed he's not understanding what we're saying, and we talk in front of him. And I remember one of the days when he was having his moments, and I told my sister sitting right in front of him, just ignore him. And he spoke back and he said, "You're going to do that again? You're going to ignore me?"
So
out of nowhere. Yes, he actually spoke those words.
So he always had an understanding then, did he?
Clearly.
But he wasn't reacting.
Clearly, because he said this. He's like, "You're going to ignore me again?" I still remember those words, Nicki.
Was everyone like...
Yes, we were just we were shell-shocked, like, you know, as if a rabbit spoke.
Because can you give a little more context as to... Because there are... And forgive me if I say this.
That's okay.
But with autism or neurodivergence, there are many layers. So
yes, it's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
So at what layer was your brother?
He spoke in very simple sentences, sometimes not even that.
Yes.
And like the word autism suggests, he was always in his own world. So we didn't know how much was he really listening to, how much was he tuning into, or whether he was tuning in at all. We just didn't know.
Well, he clearly was.
Clearly he was, yes. And that's, now as a mother, I'm like, my body language, my tone, even if my child does not understand my words, but he understands the tone, he understands the body language.
Yeah. And how were your parents with it all?
My parents were, I mean, they were trying to survive it, to be honest. I mean, if that's the right word to use, they were trying to survive it. Our social family scene changed completely. We were a very outgoing family. We liked doing a lot of outdoor activities. That changed drastically. We just didn't like getting out because we didn't like the stares. We didn't like the way people looked at him.
Yeah, of course.
I love being around people. Yeah. I became an introvert because I didn't want to be judged by people.
And how did you find your relationship with your parents? Because obviously a lot of attention would have been going on to your brother. Yeah. Was that affecting you as well?
I was, luckily for my brother, I was the eldest. So he was like a child to me. He is like a child to me. So I took on, you know, the motherly role, and my mom was already so emotionally stressed out with being around him, with helping him, that I took on the teacher role.
Yeah, of course.
So I was like hands-on, that I'm going to help him to the best that I can. So I would teach him, I would take him to the zoo, all of that. And there's a 9-year gap between me and him. So I could drive him wherever he wanted to go and stim. So I would do all that for him. So that's the relationship I had with him. And with my parents, I remember I would argue with my dad, and I would tell him, can you, for 5 minutes, can you act like him? And my dad wouldn't understand, what does that mean? And I'm like, but you're expecting him to act like you, like us. Yeah. I remember having this conversation. I'm like, how can you ask that of him? You know? So that is, and that's at that time. Yeah. I was able to piece this puzzle together that, you know, you're asking for something really difficult.
Yeah, of course. And I guess my next question is a bit of a segue onto what you're discussing already, and that's what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when it comes to being families with autistic children, given that you had experienced that firsthand, but also as a coach?
I think navigating this autism spectrum is a different thing altogether. But like I said, understanding and absorbing this diagnosis is, I think, very important, which mothers don't give themselves time for. Families don't give themselves that time, that how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to work with this? They're straight away into, let's look for therapy. You know, anyone who can effectively sell their therapy options to you, or a center that can sell their services to you, they're just latching onto that. I would strongly, I mean, and this is a challenge that I face with mothers who call me for coaching services. I'm like, have you accepted the diagnosis? Can you make these lifestyle changes for yourself? I'm not asking you to make these changes for your son. Yes. And when I'm talking about lifestyle changes, what kind of food you're eating, are you exercising at all? How are you expecting all this from your child? Yeah, wow. If you're not doing it, if you're leading this really unhealthy lifestyle, but you know you want your child to snap out of autism, doing all this, you know, exercise, this really rigorous regime that you've got in place, but you are not supportive in the sense that you're not doing it with him, I'm like, it's not going to work. Yeah, of course. You have to change your mindset. It's all about mindset.
Yeah. And we'll talk a lot about mindset a little bit later.
Yeah.
With the challenges, I know that we were talking before about exercises that you would do
Yes.
with family.
Yes. The main thing is, and when moms call me, first of all, that's what I draw their attention to.
Yes.
So
is this before the diagnosis or is this?
This is after.
Okay.
I mean, moms contact me after they get the diagnosis and they don't know what they're supposed to do with it. So, when they call me and they're like, I want my child to do this. And I'm like, okay, hang in there. Do you know how this is affecting you? They're like, oh, no, I mean, I understand that it's difficult, but, I need to get to work with my child. I'm like, no, you need to process this. And when they still don't understand, I draw their attention to how their body is coping. Negative energy in their bodies every single day, carrying that, how it's weakening their body.
Yeah.
I'm like, how are you going to work with your child?
Totally.
Yes.
I mean, we've got a lot to talk about when it comes to mindset, law of attraction and all of that. It would be difficult to be faced with something that going into it is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that's when we have to look at things like the power of mindset.
Yeah.
But still, it would be difficult to think, what am I supposed to do here? Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, and when you're not, we know for a fact that emotional stress, mental stress, whatever kind of stress you're talking about, that inhibits your thinking process. You're not present, you're not in the moment. Stress can really overtake your thinking ability.
Yes.
So that's why I'm like, when I coach mom, I try to put them in a place through gentle massage movements. I try to take them to a place where they're like, it's all good. I got this.
Yeah.
Because once they're there, they're able to talk and they're able to, and then we can work as a team. We can partner together and help the child.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So with all of this, because you obviously do a huge amount of work in this space, can you share a particularly challenging experience that you've had? Something that comes to mind, you think, that was tough, but we got through it.
Yeah. As a teacher.
Yes.
Yes, I've had many. But one particular one was of a child, a teenager, who was very physically aggressive. So I've been like spat on, punched, kicked, everything, you name it, been there with him. But
gosh, that's a bit scary.
It is. And I would always dread when that child would come to school. I would just dread it. But then I had to change my mindset. I'm like, no child wants to be that way. And that took a lot of working on myself to every day greet him, with arms open, with a smile. And the child was able to, because I developed that relationship with that specific child, he was able to confide in me. He was verbal. So he could confide in me and tell me that, certain things have happened to him in his household. And I know that's not just that child. I know for a fact, I've been there, Nicki. I'm going to be very honest that when we don't know how to deal with something, we resort to aggression to control it.
If we can't communicate our feelings or we feel like we're unheard.
And we want to control, and moms especially, if whatever they're carrying, whatever baggage they're carrying with them, unfortunately, the victims become children. They take it out on their children, physical violence. And most kids who can't talk, they have no choice but to suffer through it. But then there are kids who can talk. They'll tell you that we have been put through this, our moms have hit us like this, and it's painful to hear this. It's really painful to hear this, but I was able to talk to the parent and say, you know what, your child is expressing, he's saying these things. So you have to, I could successfully draw the mother's attention to, you need to change not which therapy center you take your child to, but your relationship with your child.
Yeah.
That has to be worked on before you think about moving forward with any therapy, any other therapy.
Well, I guess that's a really good segue into the next question around, like, how do you help parents and siblings deal with the emotional stress of situations like this? Because it would be common, right? Because a big part of neurodivergent, it's also having a limited self-awareness, emotional intelligence to a degree. In some areas, super smart, like very hyper targeted in their intelligence, but the human skills are usually the areas that are lacking. Yeah. So that means there would just be so much of this ups and downs, which would just take such a toll on families.
Yeah, and particularly on siblings, because they don't get a platform like that to come out and talk about the stress and trauma they've gone through. Moms get to do that. I don't think, Nicki, even fathers get to. They they get traumatized as well. But we're always talking about how difficult it is for an autism mom.
Yes.
And sure, it is. But the cost of the therapy and, I mean, everything, the father goes through it as well. And men, unfortunately, are not able to talk it out as the way we women do. Let's face it, right? We women talk far more easily.
Yes.
And express easily, but that does not come so easily for men.
No.
So that's there. And then siblings don't get, I mean, I've been a sibling. I am a sibling, not been. I am a sibling. So I get to come up here and tell you that autism is not easy on anyone in the family. It's not just the mom. It's the siblings. It's the father. It's grandmothers as well, to watch their grandchildren go through, or grandkid go through whatever they are going through. It's not easy on anyone. So back to the question that you were talking about, siblings. A lot of siblings don't even know what they're going through because it becomes normal for them. They're born into it. They don't know any other way of being, you know. I was lucky in the sense that I knew a before and after because he was my youngest. I knew what my life was before he came in. Yeah, but for a lot of children who've got siblings on the spectrum, they don't know any other way of being. So they're always carrying that stress in their bodies. Yeah, so when moms come to me and when they start talking to me, by the end of that conversation, they're always like, oh, my other child, I haven't given that child importance. Always. They'll realize that they haven't you know, given their other relationships any time and how they've been affected and how they've been just tunnel visioned into just it's them and that autistic child.
Yeah.
That's it. So I've been able to draw that their attention to take some time out with your other children. Go on dates with your children.
Yes.
You know, they need mom with that.
Time,
yes, they need that one-on-one time with you. So I've been able to successfully, to a certain degree, you know, because there's still obviously a lot of learning, a lot of awareness still to come. But I think whoever I coach, I'm able to draw their attention to other relationships in the family as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about one of the most impactful things that someone has said to you that has changed your perspective?
Yes. My first teaching experience, I was a solo teacher. Oh my God, I still remember how difficult that was. 5 nonverbal hyper kids, 5-year-olds.
Non-verbal. But hyper.
Hyper.
How does that work?
Exactly. That was what I was asking myself. How does that work and why am I here? Because you're always thrown at the deep end and I'm like, how am I supposed to get anything done in this space? I'm just making sure that we come out alive from this every day. That's all that I had to. But I remember I felt as a teacher I should be teaching.
Yes.
This child should be walking out of my classroom having learned this, and according to my lesson plan, it's not happening, and that would stress me out. And I remember reaching out to a friend of mine, and this is back in Malaysia. He was a Sunrise. It's another type of program, a Sunrise program practitioner. And I called him. I'm like, what the hell is this? I mean, how am I supposed to navigate this? There's nobody here to talk to because they've got their hands full with their kids.
Course.
What do I do? I mean, I hate coming to work.
Yeah.
And he's like, I remember he said, and I remember calling him because once I remember one of those kids, he tried to kick me and I was trying to defend myself. So I just pushed the kid back and I felt horrible. I felt horrible. And I was like, I didn't mean anything by that. But I was protecting I was defending myself. And I got on the call straight away. I'm like, I think I should just leave. This is not for me.
Did you have anxiety? Because I can't even imagine going into an environment where you know that you're being, you know, bullied by kids. They're aggressive towards you, and they obviously don't know what they're doing a lot of the time.
Yes.
But you're still, I would be living in fear in a lot of ways. I wouldn't be looking forward to going into work, and you're doing such incredible work by showing up, really, at the bare minimum. But
I thought that's just what's expected of me. But then I understood later on that my own regulation, self-regulation was so important, which I was ignoring as a teacher.
Yes.
It's not just for parents, the whole regulation process. It's also for teachers and educators. So I remember speaking to this person, this friend of mine, and I clearly remember what he told me. He's like, you know what, Farah, forget everything. Forget your lesson plans. Just chuck it out.
Yeah.
As long as a child can come out of your classroom, even by the end of the year, and you've taught him nothing, absolutely nothing, if that child can walk out of your classroom and feel respected and valued, you've done your job.
But what if you don't?
I changed my perspective completely.
Okay,
Nikki.
so your mindset was like, this is not about me, this is about them.
Yeah,
it's
hugs,
not personal.
Laugh, it's not personal. Hugs, laugh, they don't mean anything by it. And I kid you not, Nikki, by the end of the school year, I remember when, not even by the end, the kids would come in every morning looking for me and just to hug me. And their parents would see that.
Yeah.
You know, kids can't make this up.
No, and that's what you're doing it for, really, aren't you?
And that's it. I loved it. I started looking forward going to school just for those hugs.
Yes.
Yeah, that mindset again, back to, changed everything, changed my actions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I think it's time that we moved more into the law of attraction and mindset. The law of attraction is something I have such a huge belief in. In fact, it was one of my first podcast episodes that I did. And it's essentially on the premise that all of your positive thoughts can essentially create positive results in your life. And I know that I believe that that's how we started speaking.
Yes. Oh, that's such a beautiful story. Are you going to say it or am I going to say it?
You can say it.
I love it. Oh my God. I've been coaching women it's my first group cohort that I'm running. And I've been talking extensively about, the laws of attraction, positivity, your thoughts and all of that. And I'm on my Instagram and Nicki pops up talking exactly what I've been blabbering about for weeks and weeks and weeks about laws of attraction. I'm like, oh my God, we need to connect. This needs to happen. Yeah. I need to see this lady. And I'm so grateful, Nicki.
I think it all worked out, but it's funny with that episode because, we were talking a little bit before about it. It was one of the first solos and I was like, oh, but I had nothing but positive thoughts because I believe in this topic so much. And I've always tried to follow tried to be as positive as possible, even through times that you're like, there is no positivity here because there always is. Or there's a learn. And, I guess when we're thinking about the law of attraction, it's thinking about the things that you believe in, those positive thoughts, like what life do you want? And think about it in a positive way. If you're going to think, well, I'm a failure, then you'll end up acting like a failure. You'll behave like one. You'll feel like one. Yeah. And naturally, you'll attract those things
those people
tell you, the people that tell you that actually you're not it. But if you're positive in everything that you're doing, and it's not that you have to go, like life is so great. That actually
we all have our days. Yeah, we all have our
days. Yeah. But it is so great. And everything there is a learn. And I think by just thinking about the life that you really want, you'll just start to attract those things. A big thing for me was always around, when I launched She Leads the Way, I was like, oh, and it was something that I thought I've got to do this. But then I also thought, well, who cares? Who's going to want to care? And like all of these. And I thought, no. And I always try and reframe my thinking. And I'm like, no, I am helping people. Like this is a cause beyond me. And it's just about having that reframe. I'd love to talk more about how you lean into the law of attraction in this space, because obviously it's a very, very emotional moving through, the autism with families, and it's a tough topic.
Just a few one was us connecting. The second one was I've lived in UAE I was born here, I've lived here all my life, but we were outside UAE for 7 years or so. And I remember when we were in Pakistan, my husband wanted to do he's a filmmaker. So
cool.
So he wanted to do something in the autism field, like, create something, make something. But then, we were bogged down with moving to Dubai and just life. We never got around to it. So when we were coming here, 3 months into us moving into Dubai, some old contacts, some old acquaintances of my husband, they got in touch with my husband. They're retired. Yes. And they got in touch with my husband and they were like, we want to fund this thing. I'm not going to say it out yet. We want to fund this thing, and whatever they wanted to fund is exactly what my husband wanted to make.
Really?
Yeah. So there were people out there who were willing to put money.
Oh my goodness.
And he came home, he's like, this is what they want me to make. And I'm like, good Lord, this is something.
See, these are the things you can't make up.
You can't make
them up.
It's crazy. This was by far the biggest one. And then the other one is that my son, he loves to cook.
Yes.
He's developed this passion for cooking. He's always in the kitchen. Good for that. Good for him.
Good on him.
Yeah. And I remember I was in my gym, my building gym upstairs, and this lady walks in and she's exercising and she's like, I always see your kids at the gym, and it's so nice to see young kids who are, who are
Working out.
who are working out, who care about their health. We're just having, the typical conversation. Yes. And then while talking, she asked me what I do, and I asked her what she does. And she's like, I run a kitchen just down, just a couple of blocks.
Get him in the kitchen.
I know. I'm like, what exactly do you mean by you run a kitchen? What do you mean by that, right?
Yes.
So she's like, I run programs where I train, and the certifications that I give are internationally recognized. And I'm like, okay, slow down, Farah, because my head is exploding. I can hear her in slow motion.
Yes.
And when she's talking, I try to nudge, and I'm like, you know what, my child is on the spectrum. I'm a special educator, so if my son could learn and I could help, I could be an assistant to make this work. We work with a lot of special needs children, and a lot of them have received certifications. Wild. I mean, if that's not law of attraction,
I know.
Nicki.
And this is the thing. I think that if people think, that's just such a coincidence, but there is no coincidence. If you believe something, it will find its way to you.
It will. Oh my God, I can go on. Can I tell you another one?
Please, I love these stories.
Another one is so beautiful. I remember when we were awaiting Suleiman's diagnosis, and we actually left him and went to Singapore for a husband-wife quick vacation. And I remember going to one of the theme parks over there, Sentosa Island.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and those, what do you call those cart rides?
The gondola things?
No. I mean, they have proper tracks.
I know actually what you mean.
Yeah, so they're quite fast.
Yeah.
They're quite fast, right? So I remember there was a family over there, and I was in queue waiting for my, I did one round, and I was quickly running up so that I could beat the queue and, get on it again. There was a family who was blocking my way, and they were so painfully slow. And I was like, oh my God, can they walk a little faster? And I'm not looking up. But when I looked up, they were with a child who had CP, cerebral palsy.
Yes.
And so everyone had to help the child up.
Of course, that's why they're slow.
I know, and I felt terrible thinking
You're like,
that
come
way.
on, never mind, take your time.
Take your time. But at the same time, in my head, I've left my son behind, who I know has autism. No formal diagnosis yet, but it's like just playing in my head that I'm dreading the inevitable. I'm dreading the diagnosis, and I've been thinking, it's on my mind while I'm on this vacation. And I look at that, Nicki, and I saw the way that family was having a blast.
Yes.
They were just happy to be there.
Yeah.
This energy that family had was so beautiful. I still remember standing on that bridge and just dumbstruck by, how beautiful that family looked together with that child. And they were on this, I mean, nothing was stopping them that, I can't sit on this. No, we're going to sit on everything.
Yeah.
And 8 years later, and I was like, I wish I could be like that mother.
Yes.
She's having such a good time with her kids.
You are.
But not at that time I wasn't.
How long ago was this?
This is like about 15 years ago.
Okay, okay, because you definitely encompass that when I meet you. Yeah. That is who you are now.
Yeah, and then 8 years later, I was on that bridge with my kids and Suleiman on that ride.
Yes.
And we were having the time of our life. It was only when I crossed that bridge, I remembered that bridge, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the bridge where I saw that family, and I'm like, that's what I would wish for my family one day. And I'm there with my family.
That's so special.
Yeah, so I know a big part of laws of attraction is to believe and to want something so badly. And I know at that moment I did want that.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I love that. I think also it's interesting to talk about the opposite side of it, is people asking me, I'm always thinking such negative things. Does that mean that negative things are going to happen to me? And the one thing that I like to say is it's still all rooted in your belief.
Yes.
And also we have so many negative thoughts. And I, ever since looking into the law of attraction, I realized what I'm actually saying to myself. And so I'm now having this internal dialogue that's like, oh my gosh, I don't look great today too. Yes, I do.
No, I mean, who else is going to do it for you?
Exactly.
Right?
So, but when it comes to these negative thoughts, we have 20 to 60,000, 80% of them are negative.
Yeah.
If you genuinely believe what you're saying and it's negative, then that's where you need to start. The awareness around why you're finding that
Yeah.
why you're negative about that.
Yeah.
What is it rooted in? And then start there, because you can turn positive into anything, and you don't have to be positive about everything. Like it's normal not to be positive.
It's human.
It's human.
Yeah.
So it's just being able to identify, well, how is it that I'd like to behave, or how is it that I'd like to feel?
Yes. How is this serving me? How is it, I mean,
Exactly.
how long should I hold on to this thought? And that's what I coach moms with specifically, that, you know, how is this serving you? How is this thought process serving you? It's not, is it? So yes, it's difficult, but let's rephrase it, like what you just rightly said. How can we rephrase this to make it a more powerful statement? So yeah, words are powerful as well. Right?
And what was the story? You were telling me a story before we came, and it was very much rooted in mindset. Oh, it was that families can tend to get quite negative because of the experiences that they've had naturally. There's a lot of them. But the way that you're living your life is seeing things through a positive lens, and you've found really positive experiences as a result.
I was in Pakistan for a year, Nicki, where and you'll hear this a lot. You probably must have that, you know, oh, there's no acceptance, there's no awareness in Pakistan. And they're probably right. They must have had their share of experiences, right, for them to say that. But I was there for a year, and I remember that when Suleiman would go to the mosque, my child who's on the spectrum, he was 14 at the time. He would go, he would have his quirks where he would be rocking vigorously while waiting to start prayers. He would appear different, right? There'd be people around him who after prayer would come and blow on him. You know, after prayers we blow. And that's just basically a sign of may Allah heal you, or may God heal you. That's what it actually means. But I thought that was so beautiful. These are people who don't know him, who are just walking out and blowing on him.
I
and
think
walking
so
out.
too.
And like this, you attract this sort of thing, right? And it was absolutely beautiful. And there's so many times when Suleiman has had public meltdowns in a really overcrowded place, where families have actually come to me and stood by me and said, do you need us? Is there anything we can do?
Really?
That's a big deal. In a place like Pakistan, that's a big deal. And nobody...
The power of community, huh?
Exactly. I mean, I don't know these people. They've come to me. They're like, okay, we see, you know, you're in a difficult situation. Would you like us to... And even if I'd say no, because I can't really talk to them.
Yeah, of course.
I'm trying to...
But you know what? That is incredible awareness as well, because a lot of people wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So the fact that people are offering their help in this situation is actually really beautiful.
It is. It absolutely is. And I don't think we talk enough about these moments. You know, we're very quick to talk about the negativity out there. We don't celebrate these beautiful moments enough.
So Farah, how can communities better support families with autistic members?
Nicki, one thing I always say is that parents like me, right, who've got children on the spectrum, we feel that it's everyone's job to know about autism. But before we were affected by autism, we didn't know what autism was. And I think it's a bit unfair to have this expectation that even though there are people out there who are not affected by autism should go out of their way and learn. It's not their job. It's our job to open our arms and make it easy for them to learn about autism. Having said that, living in the UAE, I've never experienced a problem, help has always been at hand over here. But the thing that I feel, where there's room for improvement is in schools, particularly where being different is like opens a room for bullying. Yeah. You know, and that
especially in schools.
And that's so common, right? Being different means, okay, he's an easy target to be bullied. And there are a lot of children on the spectrum who are diagnosed, but they don't come out, and nobody knows that they're carrying that diagnosis. Sometimes even those kids don't know. Their parents don't share that with them. So I think these talks should be encouraged in school, neurodivergence talks. And it's not just particularly autism, people who are just different. Just because they're different, they're not less. And normalize these conversations that you don't have to learn a certain way, you don't have to talk a certain way, you have to respect differences. So again, not just autism. I think neurodivergence is, definitely. Should be something that should be widely spoken about and should be normalized in classroom settings,
And beyond that, I think even for adults who, a big reason why I thought this would be a great fit for She Leads the Way was initially because I don't have a lot of awareness of it myself. And so when you said that you were a coach for families with autism, I thought, I've been surrounded to a degree, but not anywhere near as much awareness that I believe I should have. And so I feel like if I don't know, there are other people that don't know either. And I feel like as much awareness in this space is really important. So thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Nicki. It was a pleasure. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun too. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks.